Right, so John here has got a bee suit on. So he's a beekeeper and this will prevent him from being stung. You can see the mesh here that he can still see through. We've got a lot of elastic around the arms and things, and he'll often wear gloves so that the bees can't get to him and sting. So when you're a beekeeper, the other name for that is apiarist. So he'll use also the smoker and the smoke, and that'll calm the bees down when he has to open up and look inside a hive. So in a hive here could live about 10 to 50,000 bees. Right. There's also 3 types of bees. There's the queen bee, the male bee, that's called the drone bee, and there's the worker bee, and she's the female bee. Now, the role of the queen bee is to lay eggs, so she could lay about 1,000 to 2,000 eggs every day. The other worker bees will also build the honeycomb, so she'll lay an egg inside each one. They'll take a few weeks to hatch and turn into worker bees.
The queen pops out an egg every second or two, which is about 2,000 per day, and she goes in backwards like that into the cell, which is cleaned by all our workers first, so it's really polished up. The wax is nice and shiny, just like that, and totally clean. Pops an egg in and out she comes, gets ready to the next one, another second, bang into the next one, and she's just like backing a truck in and out. That's all she does. She gets fed from this end and she pops eggs on the other end, and that's all she can do all day. And so after about a year or two, that's it. There's not many eggs coming back out, and that's her. She lasts about up to 4 years.
She will only leave the hive probably once or twice in her life. The first time she'll leave the hive is to mate with the drones. So that actually occurs outside the hive, up in the air, where she'll mate with several drones who are circling and flying in a circle up there waiting for her to arrive. Several males will mate with her. Once that process is done, they actually die, and their queen will then fly back to the hive, and then she's ready to go for her whole lifetime. Now, the worker bees can live about 3 to 6 weeks and produce the honey. So the males don't produce the honey, and they don't sting as well. So they're much nicer to work with. The bees in a lifetime will produce about a teaspoon of honey each. So that's not a lot. So the drone bee doesn't sting at all, does it?
Hasn't got a sting.
Hasn't got a sting. The worker bee does have a sting, so she can sting. She can only sting once, because once she's stung, the sting actually is pulls out the back of her abdomen, and she then dies.
It's got little barbs on it, just like a fishing hook, and it sort of goes in like 2 syringes. They work themselves in deeper and deeper, so quicker you can get it out, the less pain it is.
So that worker bee, she'll only live a few weeks. As I said before, she'll make about a teaspoon of honey in her lifetime, and that's her role. They'll also have different duties in their lifetime, in their lifespan, so it is all set out really, their
As
role.
they grow up, just like us, we go into kindergarten and then into school. So what the bee does, it hatches. The outside is their hard shell, and it needs to dry and firm up. So when they're young, they do childcare, they do cleaning the beds and all this sort of stuff inside the hive, and as they grow up, they start flying, and they're very hairy. So the first flights they go out, they collect pollen, because pollen is very dusty, and they collect it on all their hair, and then they brush it off and form it into the balls with a little bit of sticky nectar, and roll it up and bring it back. And after a week of that, their hair wears out and all the hair is gone, so they can't do that anymore. And then they become nectar collectors, foragers, and when they're really old, they become guard bees at the front, because if they sting something and die, it doesn't matter because they're already old. That's how they do it.
Okay, so the bees make honey for themselves to eat. All right. They are busy, they go to all the flowers, collect the nectar, and they'll transport that back into the hive, and that will turn that into honey.
And the honey is the bees' food to keep them warm, because honey is mostly sugar. And when it's cold, like now, we put 3 layers on. The bees can't do that. They eat honey and they shiver. And when they shiver, just like that, keeps the hive warm at a certain temperature. And that's the honey is the carbohydrates, which is the energy to keep them warm.
So how you get different types of honey is when the different trees flower at different times of year, the beekeeper will then position the hives in that forest or the location where all that species of tree is flowering. So the bees will go ahead and collect the nectar, turn that into honey, and then that will be one variety, one flavour of honey. So you can see by different colours, and it's also going to have a different flavour as well.
Instead of putting fat on, like if we eat too much sugar, we get fat. The bees have like little glands, and wax comes out of those little glands, just like on a duck where you have duck fat come out. And pigs get fat, and like humans get fat, they'll make the wax in their body and it comes out like little fish scales. And they form it all together to turn it into honeycomb, and it is all natural. So to produce a kilo of pure beeswax, the bees eat 7 kilos of honey, and then digest that honey, and it comes out as those little fish scaly things.
The bees when they make the beeswax, they form it into the honeycomb structure like children would use Play-Doh. So they squash it between one bee and another to form the 6-sided hexagonal shape. It's very strong and very light. The honeycomb is very thin, you can actually see through it. And it has 2 sides, so there's actually a centre down the middle. And when they build the honeycomb, one side to the other is offset for extra strength. So this is the full honeycomb with all the honey oozing out of it, which is really yummy, eaten on top of crumpets or ice cream or muesli and things like that. The honeycomb, if that's melted down, it is a solid block of beeswax, and that also can be used for a lot of crafts and cosmetics and things as well.
The pollen is the protein, which is like eggs and meat, and the pollen is very important for their lifespan, because the better the pollen variety and the nutrition in the pollen, the longer the bee will live. It forms all the hard shell of the bee, which is that bees haven't got bones like us. The bone is the outside, and all that is pollen, their whole internal makeup. It can't be produced by nectar or honey only, so the pollen is to give them a balanced diet. They eat pollen and they eat nectar. The nectar is to keep them warm and energetic, and the pollen is that protein, and they build up like muscles like what we've got. Because they're vegetarian, they don't eat meat, but they need protein, and that's their protein.
A lot of people just have honey in cooking or sandwiches and eat it that way. We also turn the honey and beeswax into other products here in the shop. So we've got our really popular honey and macadamia ice cream. Honey can also go into things like cosmetics, and the beeswax doesn't get wasted. That also gets reused or recycled in a way. It can be made into beeswax candles.
Or lip balm. It's really good. Stops the cracking. You can actually use honey everywhere you use sugar. Just toss out the sugar and use honey anywhere. Doesn't matter if you make a sauce or if you make cake. In bread, honey will make the bread last longer. It stays fresher longer. It's just that little bit more expensive than the white stuff, but it's better for us.
Honey doesn't have a shelf life, so it is exempt from use-by dates, best before dates, all of that. They've actually found honey in Egypt.
In the pyramids. Well, the brood nest is supposed to be about 36 to 38 degrees, just like human temperature. And obviously when it's really cold, it can slow down and get a little bit colder. So then the bees don't breed because it's too cold. They stop egg laying and all that sort of stuff in the middle of winter. And to keep it cool, like we paint the boxes white because they're usually in the sun, but if they're in the wild in a tree hollow, they're insulated with very thick wood because the hollow is thick. And then the only thing they can do is evaporative cooling. That means they go and get a lot of water and they spray it out of their mouths, and they fan with their wings, and that's how they do the fanning, just like in a big air conditioner with water in a house. The windows are open, and so they blow moist air through there, and you know, they stress out when it's over 40. Stop flying and stay inside.
Bees, when they go looking for their food, they'll go to the closest source, but they can travel up to 5 kilometres from their hive to find water or food or flowering trees, whatever they need. So the bees communicate by doing a waggle dance. So it's actually a dance in the shape of a figure 8. So depending on how long and skinny that 8 is or how short and fat it is, so that shape of that dance and the pattern is a way of communication that the bees will have to the other bees. So the angle of that dance is in relation to where the sun is and how far away that the food is from the hive that they've found. So when they come back to the hive after finding a food source, they'll explain and do that dance to all the other bees, so then they'll know how far that food source is from the hive and what direction it is also in relation to the sun from the hive.
This one is a special viewing hive we built for the kids and the big kids too. So it's totally out of glass. They have no access to the timber boxes. This is what a normal beehive is made of. So they walk through the glass tube into a little elbow and straight into here. There's nothing in this wooden box, so it's all in glass. And they stay away from the glass because it's a little bit cool, but it's special glass that you can't break very easy. And yeah, it's just, you can't see inside the hive because, you know, it's very hard to pull things out because they've built all this special honeycomb into the top. We don't want to squash it and them cause them a lot of work. So just for viewing on the outside, and in the summertime it's very busy. This channel here gets blocked up with bees. They don't know if they're going in and out. Well, you can't really tell. They're just squashing through like, whoa. And they're running over this black airstrip, which is covered with propolis, which is antiseptic. It cleans their feet as they come in, and they all come in clean. So what it does is sterilizes all their feet, and all their stuff sticks to it, and they stick it everywhere. We put ventilation holes right around the hive, and they fill it up with propolis because they don't like the ventilation too much, and anything that's open and in the tree hollow, they pack the whole tree hollow with propolis, and that sterilizes everything, keeps it all nice and clean, just like we do the laundry.
You can also see them collecting the pollen coming back in on their legs, and there are different coloured pollen today. So there's some orange and really creamy coloured pollen. So they've collected that from different trees.
Yeah, which is different protein levels, different amino acid, everything is different from different plants, and so it gives them a good balanced diet when they have it all mixed up in the hive.
Oh, bees are really important to pollinate farmers' crops and things to produce food.
So bees are attracted to flowers. They collect the pollen on their legs, those little things, and when they do that, they'll collect it from the male flower, bring it to the female, and fertilize it. And everything that's fertilized becomes a fruit, like a pumpkin, cucumber, cherry, apples. All that doesn't happen without the bees going from flower to flower. I plant in the garden stuff I can eat, and that supports the bee. That's how I got into beekeeping. So, you know, I like citrus, and bees love the citrus flower. They have an awesome smell when they flower. You can smell it from a long way away, and bees go and collect a lot of nectar from the citrus trees, lemons, mandarins, oranges, and they make the beautiful orange blossom honey. So they're great to eat in winter time, keep your vitamin C level up, love it. Also, we got the blueberries, and they're another superfood. They're just about to flower, there's little buds on here everywhere. Bees love them, they fertilize them, and then you got beautiful blueberries for your pavlova just before Christmas. And then we got a few natives. The banksia is an awesome honey. This is the Banksia from East Gippsland, saw Banksia. You can see the little short teeth on there, and the honey tastes like caramelized banana. It's awesome. There's another species of Banksia. Australia got quite a few, and when they flower it attracts a lot of birds, and bees get pollen and nectar from the Banksia crop, which is, you know, usually pretty big. And then yeah, we have Manuka, which is the craze over the last 20 years. And that's tea tree. Australia got about 100 different species, and they flower right through the season, each one at a different time. And we have them from the mountains to the coast, and they're all over Australia, Tasmania and New Zealand.
If you'd like to come and visit us at the farm, we are open 7 days a week from 9 till 5. You can come down and try and taste all the different flavours of honey. We've also got the bees behind the glass beehive, which is quite safe to have a look at up really close. Try some ice creams. You can also see the bees collecting the nectar, building their honeycomb, collecting pollen. See the drone bees if you're lucky, might find the queen.